Welcome back to the Air Mobility Command Museum on a beautiful, beautiful day. Today we're going to talk about the Lockheed C-5 Galaxy and a little bit about the aircraft. The Lockheed C-5 Galaxy was built in response to a requirement to be able to carry the heaviest main battle tanks and equipment for the U.S. Army. Now in the 1960s this was not possible by any of the aircraft that the U.S. Air Force had at the time. Now the C-5 Galaxy, 131 of these aircraft were built and 50 are still in service today. Now the first C-5 flew in 1968 and the last one was delivered to the U.S. Air Force in 1989. The C-5 itself is 247 feet long. It's got a 222 foot wingspan, weighing at about 380,000 pounds empty and with a full up weight of 840,000 pounds. Now the aircraft is quite complex. It can be loaded from the front and from the back simultaneously. And it could be knelt to within 2 feet of the ground to allow for the loading of vehicles. Now the aircraft itself is powered by 4 General Electric TF39 turbofan engines. And what's important, the importance of that engine to you is the fact that it's the world's very first high bypass turbofan engine. And every airline engine built today is pretty much a descendant of this engine design. Now the inlet of the engine is 8.5 feet. And the engine can produce about 42,000 pounds of thrust. Now in the current models of the C-5M, they actually have a CF6 engine which produces about 47,000 pounds of thrust. Now the wings are quite large. The wings carry up to 321,000 pounds of fuel in 12 fuel tanks, and that's massive. That's 51,000 gallons. So it's massive in any scale possible. Now as we walk around the outside of the wingtip, another little factoid is the fact that the counterweight on that aileron is 498 pounds of depleted uranium. Because the aerodynamic forces on the aileron are so large, you need a really heavy counterweight to keep it balanced. Now as we walk around the back of the aircraft, a couple details. In the back here you'll see the exhaust for the APU. Now the aircraft has 2 auxiliary power units, and those APUs allow the aircraft to be supplied with electrical, hydraulic, and pneumatic power. So you can kneel the aircraft, you can start the engines, you can run electricity on the ground. And of course you got the number 7 left troop door here. Now when we walk back here you'll see just how big this aircraft is. You got the aft doors, and then we look up at the T-tail. Now the T-tail spans about 60 feet up there. And there is a ladder that goes all the way up in the T-tail, and there's a hatch at the top that you could gain access to the aircraft from up there. We walk around what we call the beaver tail, and then those screens there, that's an unpressurized part of the aircraft outside the pressure bulkhead, and those are what we call anti-hijack screens. And we'll walk around to the landing gear. Now the wings themselves, a little bit of information about that. They're in the wing roots, aft wing roots up there. There's 2 750-liter dewars that store liquid nitrogen, and the wings are pressurized by gaseous nitrogen to alleviate to alleviate boiling, and to allow for fire inerting for the fuel system. One thing I had mentioned before about the wings is that there's 12 fuel tanks on the C-5 Galaxy, storing up to 321,000 pounds of fuel. Now this is a cutaway wing section. This is actually off an actual C-5, and it gives you a really good idea just how big of a structure this is. Now the fuel tank that we're talking about is right there. There's no fuel bladders, there's no metal fuel tank. The tank is what we call an integral fuel tank, and it's part of the wing structure itself. So that is the fuel tank you're looking at. Now again, as I'd mentioned before, that fuel tank is pressurized by gaseous nitrogen. And of course, as mentioned, it allows for fire inerting and also keeps fuel from boiling at certain altitudes and temperatures. Now one of the benefits of an integral fuel tank is right here. You'll see these hydraulic lines that run right through the tank. The fuel itself cools the hydraulic system for the C-5 Galaxy. So it's a neat little additional feature that this gives you. So as you can see how thick the skin is. And to show you just how thick that is, that's my fingers. You can just see how beefed up that wing is to take the stresses of flight. So it's something that people don't look at very closely when they're here, but it's actually one I consider one of the more interesting exhibits. Before we go upstairs, I wanted to show you a little detail of this particular aircraft. This is aircraft 690014. Now this aircraft is at the museum because in 1974, this C-5 became the only aircraft in history to launch an ICBM nuclear missile from the rear of the aircraft in a test to see if a feasibility of using C-5s to launch nuclear missiles. The launch was successful, but they never really pursued it. So this aircraft has a little bit of a history behind it as well. Welcome to the inside of a C-5 Galaxy. Now we're in the cargo compartment. This is the lower level of the C-5 itself. The cargo compartment, which is absolutely massive, is 143 feet long, it's 19 feet wide and 13 feet tall, capable of carrying 6 Greyhound buses or 2 Abrams tanks. Now this is a very flexible arrangement that they have here. You have flip-up rollers, and the plane can carry up to 36 pallets, and that's at the box up front, and we'll take a closer look at that later. Now, in addition to the cargo down here, where it is pressurized, you also have upstairs these stairs that go up to the troop compartment. So on the second level, you have a troop compartment with 73 seats, so you can carry troops in addition to equipment. Now you'll notice right there we have a model of the Wright Flyer. And the reason we have that is the fact that the Wright Flyer flew the same distance as that cargo compartment on its first flight at Kill Devil Hill in 1903. So you have 65 years of history between that plane and the C-5 Galaxy, and it shows you just how quick technology is changing in the 20th century. And we'll move forward here. Now I'm going to turn this around, so I want to show you the aft ramp complex. Now the aft ramp complex is extremely complex. That ramp right there that you see, that's the aft pressure bulkhead. Now the aft pressure bulkhead could do one of two things. It could fold down to become a ramp to load vehicles, or it could be rotated up so you can load pallets. And it's about 6,500 pounds, so it's not a light structure. And here I'll show you the control panel for that. Now the C-5 can drop paratroopers, so you have a number 7 left and 7 right troop doors, so those can be opened in flight and paratroopers could be dropped, although it's not very efficient use of the aircraft. Now up here you have the outflow valves, you have the emergency and the normal outflow valves. Those are used for pressurization, so whenever you're in an aircraft to maintain pressurization, it's that simple. It's just a valve that opens up, and that's what those are. Another thing you'll see as we go down the troop compartment are these bottles, okay? And those are FE 1301 fire bottles. All the C-5A models had these fire bottles installed in the cargo compartment, and all of them were removed by the mid-1970s. And the reason for that was that they had found that those fire bottles, number one, accidentally discharged on numerous occasions, and of course had to be replaced. And the other issue is the potential of them incapacitating the crew because they're so effective at dousing the fire and displacing oxygen. So that system was deactivated, and no B models had that installed. So all the B models never had that system installed. So it's kind of interesting arrangement. And on the C-5, you have the different displays we show on this aircraft. And here you can see what the troop compartment looks at the top of the stairs. So it's in an airline configuration, and like a lot of military aircraft, the seats face aft for safety. Got tail stripes from all the C-5 units that used to have them. There's not many bases that actually carry the C-5 anymore, but shows you just how many bases they were at. Now I was telling you about the rollers that could be flipped up, and I'm going to flip up one of the rollers. These rollers, like I said, are quite flexible, and they're pretty advanced for their time. So I'm going to reach down here. All right, a little bit of jostling, but that's how the rollers are flipped up. So the entire cargo compartment have these rollers flipped, so you can carry 36 of those pallets. Pretty neat feature. Now on the left-hand side here is a reservoir. Let me tell you a little bit about the C-5 hydraulic system. The C-5 has 4 hydraulic systems, number 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this is a number 2 system hydraulic reservoir. Now reservoirs store the hydraulic fluid for the system. And these systems, as you can imagine, are quite huge. Number 1 and 4 each hold 95 gallons each, and 2 and 3 hold 65 gallons each. Now the hydraulic systems, of course, power everything from landing gear to the doors to the flight controls. And 1 and 4 are your main hydraulic systems for the aircraft. They power basically everything. And 2 and 3 are flight controls only. And of course, there's the other reservoir on this side. That's number 1. And it's, of course, we've got the tie-down chains for tying down vehicles. And then here's an example of what it looks like to have a vehicle tied down via the chains. All right, we're moving to the front of the aircraft, and this is where the nose is. Now, the flight deck is above on the top of these stairs, and we're going to go up there shortly. Now, the visor itself is one single piece and has one actuator right at the very front, and that whole nose opens up to allow you to load cargo and vehicles from the front of the aircraft. And of course, a pallet. Now that's an industry standard 463L pallet. It came out in the early 1960s, and it's been standard ever since. And again, this plane could carry up to 36 of those. And a good look at the back. Now what's interesting is that the chief competitor to the C5, and his little factoid, was the 747. Now the 747 was not designed as an airliner initially. It was designed as a cargo carrier. And when it failed in competition against the C5, Boeing turned around and offered the 747 to the airliners. To the airlines, and the rest is history. Let's go upstairs. All right, welcome to the flight deck. The flight deck of a C5 is quite spacious. Of course, you got the pilot on the left, co-pilot on the right. You got the flight engineer at his own desk here. And at one time when the C5 was first out, you also had the navigator, which has been long since removed. So it gives you a really good idea how big it is up here. Now the aircraft featured a triple inertial navigation system, and that allowed the aircraft to actually navigate without any use of ground stations, and it was one of the first aircraft to feature that. That wheel off to the left is your nose landing gear steering wheel. So it steers much like a car or a bus. Now here's the flight engineer's position. It looks really complex, but when you break that panel down, it's not too tough. I might do a video later breaking the panel down to different subsections to make it easier to read. Up here you'll see the fuel system. Those are 12 fuel tanks, each with their own gauge. Now this is an older A model. The B models actually have digital gauges. You got your APU control handle and your APU exhaust or your APU exhaust temperature gauges. You got your generator panel or your electrical panel, and you got your hydraulics. Now these switches here, you have the power transfer. Those are PTUs, power transmitter units, and those allow the number 1 and number 4 system to power 2 and 3, or you could actually bridge all the way across. This plane is full of redundancies, and that's definitely one of them. And you got the MADAR system, which is kind of like a maintenance computer. And that was changed quite a bit over the years from an old reel system to a digital display. Today it's a laptop on the C5M. And of course you got your circuit breakers. Tons of circuit breakers. All right, here we go. We're going to move aft from the flight deck. Now this hallway here features avionics racks on the right hand side here. Those two doors open up and you have a quite spacious compartment for the avionics components. And on the left here you have three bunk rooms. So it gives you 6 bunks to sleep on. Again, the C5 is air refuelable, so it can fly around the clock. So if you have if you're going to fly that long, you need a reinforced crew to do so. This allows them to sleep and rest. We move back further back here, and we have what we call the relief crew compartment with 7 seats, and these particular ones are folded over. You got a nice desk there to do your work on, and on the left you got 3 more seats. All right, move back here. Now it's too dark to go all the way back there, but moving further back, you have a lavatory right there. You have a galley, with an oven and a refrigerator for the crew, much like you have on any airliner. And then further back, you have the courier compartment which has 8 seats, and then that door goes into what we call the boiler room, which actually has the air conditioning system with the heat exchangers and that sort of thing. Now you cannot go from the front of the plane back to the troop compartment, so it's broken by the wing box, so you can't get back there from here. But it shows you what it looks like. So this is what the back of a C5 looks like. Now before we move up, you'll see the bunch of tech orders. These are technical orders, and these are what you use to work on the aircraft. And I think there was a 57 volume set. So you can imagine a plane this complex needs a lot of paperwork with it. So I hope you enjoyed the tour of the C5. If you ever have any questions, leave some comments and we'll answer them for you. And you have a very good day. Thank you.